Hello and welcome to Mid-Atlantic Federal Credit Union's Small Business University. My name is Taylor-Leonard and I'm your host of this monthly gathering. Each month we bring the business community together to network, to collaborate, and to share best practices in an effort to stimulate regional economic development. Thank you for joining us on the live stream as well as here in the television studio. Today we have the privilege of getting some information about branding. So we have the CEO of Van Eperen Company here with us. In addition to being the founder of Van Eperen, Laura is also, she's the new board member or a board member on the new Maryland Marketing Corporation. So we have a privilege of having her here with us today. So please join me in welcoming Laura Van Eperen.
Thank you, Kelly. And great to see so many friendly faces here in Montgomery County that I've known over the years. Having been in this market about 15 years and owned my public relations, marketing, communications firm here for 12 years, know many of you personally and the brands that you represent. So very happy to see you here. Have some friendly faces in the crowd for some nice, easy questions later. So thank you for your interest in being here today. We all have a brand, a personal brand, and then we also largely represent a professional brand. There are instances like myself where I am the brand too, but obviously have great people working for me like Steve Simon, who's taking a picture right now and promoting this event for our organization. But you are a brand within a brand, right? So you represent your organization. And hopefully you align with that organization, right? Hopefully they made sure you're a good fit. So we're going to talk about branding today and why that's very important, why your personal brand also feeds up into your organizational brand. Just for background, so our firm, we're the best darn public relations marketing communications firm here in Maryland. As Kelly said, I also serve on the Maryland Marketing Partnership Corporation, which is a new organization here at the state level. It's organized by the Department of Commerce to help promote the state. I am very committed to the local community, to our state of Maryland. It's an amazing state. We have many assets to promote. So for me personally, giving back my time to the state to help move the state move it forward, as well as the county and local organizations, is very important to me. But being here in the DMV, we also represent organizations that have national interests and international interests. So part of our message is making sure that people understand we do great local work. We're very vested in local issues, very interested in local economic issues, economic development, but then also we have the opportunity, the ability, the pleasure of working with organizations that are sharing messages throughout the country, throughout the world that are important. So that's a little bit of background on us. So we're going to talk about nailing your brand message, making sure that you do that. Take the time to make sure that you're communicating exactly what you want about your brand, because your brand is your reputation. You got to nail it. So we're going to talk about that and talking about delivering it wisely as well. So I'm going to try to forward these. All right, Kelly, I may need some assistance here. Okay, there we go. So really, what is your brand message, right? It really is so important, and it really boils down to who you are, what you do, and how you do it better than others. So by show of hands, how many of you felt really confident about nailing those three elements in the little networking session that you did? How many of you were really confident about that? Okay, it's pretty simple, right? But it also takes practice to deliver it, to nail it, to effectively nail it, to do it within 30 seconds. We talk about this elevator speech, having 30 seconds to be succinct, to be on point, to really communicate effectively who you are, what you do, and why you do it better. Or if you're selling a product, why your product is better or different than the competition. So it's very important that you take that time to really think about that and do it for yourself. If your organization absolutely should be doing it, so you should make sure that you are a brand ambassador and that you can succinctly do that as well. So we're going to talk about differentiating, pretty much the overview of today's brief conversation. But again, want to touch on some really important elements of your message. Making sure it's succinct, making sure you own it, it's effective, credible, and differentiating from the competitors, whomever else might be in your space. Making it memorable, and that's where, in this day and age, you can add personality to your brand, and that's where you come in, too, as your personal brand. So I like to talk about, on social media, we're forced to be more personal. I'm pretty buttoned up, right, and businesslike, and not super fun. I guess probably that's safe to say. People would say that about me. I'm a former journalist. I'm very much by the facts. But the opportunity with social media today is you can have a voice a fun voice, right? So my funness is that I'm a hardworking mom and that I'm an avid Green Bay Packer fan, right? So that's a little personality, and that's probably something you're going to remember about me, right? And that may be the first thing you remember about me when you think back on this presentation, because you've met many people that talk about brands and marketing, but what are you going to remember about Laura, right? So you may remember that first, and then you may remember, oh, you know what, she probably did an okay job with this presentation. If I ever need PR, marketing, professional services support, I may call her, right? But it's a great time, I think, with social media, more than ever, to communicate who you are, to have more of a personality, and make your brand more memorable. So we all know Sir Richard Branson, right? Anybody want to throw out some adjectives about how his personality may be described, what we know of him, even though maybe none of us in this room have ever met the man? We know a lot about Richard Branson, right? He's got a big personality. Some of the things that describe him include he infuses fun into everything he's involved with. So he's a brand within the big Virgin brand, right? He's a maverick, rebel risk taker, trailblazer, adventurer, disruptor, hippie tycoon, billionaire buccaneer. A lot of us know him, and a lot of us may even follow him on social media because he's got a very fun personality, but he's kicking butt, right, with a lot of his business organizations as well. So if you can find that right balance based on who you are, your personality, that's gold, in my opinion. So finding that right balance for you and being comfortable with it and owning it, that is something I'd like for you to take away today from this session. So brand ambassadors, right? We're all brand ambassadors. Within our organizations, the lead ambassadors are truly the CEO, the leadership, but you're an amazing ambassador being out here in the community. Everything you say and do can support the brand, right? How you represent the brand, how you reflect the brand when you're here in public forums, when you're meeting people, it's the credibility that you're pulling through on behalf of that brand. It's so important. Staff, down to the very important person who picks up the phone within your organization, right? Administrative assistants, so important to being sure that they are carrying your brand forward and representing you and what your organization stands for. Does anybody want to throw out ideas about who are other brand ambassadors within your own organizations? Who else is important to make sure that they understand who you are, what you do, so that they can help you carry your reputation forward as well?
Consumers, customers.
Exactly.
Salespeople.
Right. There are a lot of stakeholders, right? Depending on what you do, what you're promoting, if you're an issues-based organization, if you're selling professional services, products, you have brand ambassadors. Face-to-face brand ambassadors that personally know you in the community, know that you're a great resource, that you're going to take care of somebody that I may refer you to. Very important. And then what is your online persona, right? So there are brand ambassadors online too, and we like to call those followers, influencers. So those folks too, they need to know you, but they're probably not going to know you, well, not everybody's going to necessarily know you firsthand. So how you represent your brand online is important too. I think we all know Facebook, how some people have different Facebook personalities than who they may actually be in person, right? There's their Facebook personality, and then there's the real personality. We know of what's going on in that person's life. And, making sure that those brands, when you talk professionally, that those are consistent. What you're reflecting on LinkedIn, what you're reflecting on Twitter, professionally, it needs to reflect who you are. Services you're going to deliver is true to your reputation, to your professional brand. What you do on Facebook, what people do on Facebook, that's a personal, right? But we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute here. But very important to have those brand ambassadors also understand who you are and be able to help carry your brand forward. So training the messengers, this is more internal messengers within your own organizations, people that are part of your core organization that are truly the #1 brand messengers. So, what we recommend and what we do within my firm for organizations is looking at your core messages, at least on an annual basis. We're not looking for you to change, your brand and your messaging every year, but we recommend that you do look at it. Has it evolved at all? Do we need to tweak it? Is there a better differentiator based on a new product line we started offering? So really taking a look at that, at least annually, unless there's some kind of event that triggers a reason to do that before then. And making sure that, there are kind of the three, we like to say 3 primary messages about what you are, who you do, what you do. in how you do it better. But then there are also some sub-messages, right? The details about what you do that go into the weeds a little bit more. So looking at those primary and secondary messages is important. And practicing delivery of those is very important too, especially for the leadership, especially if they're going to be quoted in the media, especially if they're going to be out speaking. Every word counts, especially with the media, right? We don't like leadership to be quoted out of context, so use every word wisely. And tapping into expert communicators. We see this more often than ever now in the era of social media. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but using real professionals to guide your brand messaging and to help you train is very important. And especially if you're going to go on the record, especially if you're going in front of big, important audiences. We see a lot of people putting out messages on social media that are guided by more junior folks because they're digital natives. A lot of, I think it's starting to evolve. But within, the first 5 years of when social media hit, really there were a lot of people, oh, my high schooler, really knows how to use this kind of tool. So I'm just going to empower that person to help me put out some social media messages. And we've seen huge gaps. We're going to reference one here in a minute. But being very careful and using true professionals to guide your messaging and help move your brand forward, because one gaffe can take down an organization. So brand delivery. So we have live or taped, right? Live or Memorex kind of opportunities. I like to say, if anybody remembers the Memorex commercials, right? Like, wow, I'm really getting up there in age, like my kids would have no idea what Memorex is. You have live opportunities, and then you have these digital new opportunities, and then there's kind of the traditional print. So you really, I think, can have a huge impact in any of those forums. As long as you're on message, you're prepared, you've done your homework, you want to make sure you're the most effective in delivering your message directly to the audience that you're trying to reach through any of those types of opportunities. But the beauty of the digital world is that you can tell your brand story 24/7 now, right? So that's also a curse. We could be on social media every hour of the day. And there's some people that want to be on social media every hour of the day. Well, is that truly a strategy-driven, tactic? Do we really want to do that? So thinking strategically through what makes the most sense about how and when to tell your brand story is very important. I think we've also seen a huge evolution in how we can communicate messages over the last 10 years plus with social media, because largely social media is free, right? So we feel like we all should be on it, we all should be doing it regularly, quite frequently, but doing it well still defaults back to what is your overall strategy? Who are the target audiences you want to reach? And what is the message you want to reach with those specific audiences to make sure that you are maintaining your reputation, a credible brand. So don't just, jump into social media. Don't, default to a digital native who doesn't or may not completely own and understand the brand that you're trying to move forward. So everything you do should default to your core messaging, no matter what tactic you're going to implement. And we know there are a ton of tactics that you can implement here, right? There are all the traditional types, direct mail, telemarketing, radio, TV, but we've seen those really kind of take a back seat to social media, right? I mean, I guess it does depend on your brand and what you're doing. But in a lot of the world that we're dealing with, a lot of the corporate world, they're still doing some of the traditional, the print, advertising. But when you look at the free component, or it's time really that you need to put into to make sure that you're developing a product that you can put out on social. When you look at that, we're really seeing a lot of the more social mediums rise up. But everything you do, and all of them are important to a lot of organizations still, really needs to default back to your core messaging. So at the end of this presentation, I'm going to have you take an oath and promise me that everything you do will be brand consistent and will default back to your core messages. So this is one of the case studies I was telling you about earlier. It was a gaffe, a huge social media gaffe. And you can Google at any given time. Big brands are also making big gaffes. And so you have to be very careful about what you put out in social media. So this was a gaffe that they wanted to retract because they made a statement that they were embarrassed about. So this is Clorox, we wish we could bleach away our last tweet. Didn't mean to offend. It was meant to be about blah, 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 emojis that could use a cleanup. So even big brands are screwing up right now with social media. So I caution you to really be careful about what you're doing. Think it through strategically. There are issues of the day that you want to weigh in on, which was this incident, but you also really default to doing it well, doing it right, thinking it through before you post. Think before you post. That's one of our big messages. The written word. I'm going to run through a couple formats here that you may or may not be using, but we would recommend that you would think about for marketing your brand, your organization. Blogging is a great way to have a longer format conversation about things that are going on or even just topics you want to push out to your core audiences. So there are long or short form opportunities to blog. Blogs can be a paragraph, 2 paragraphs. You may want to go a little deeper if you want to have a little bit more insight, but maybe not too. So there's a lot of flexibility with blogging. That's really great these days. And then one big driver from a marketing perspective is blogs. If you've got them on your website, they really can help drive inbound traffic. You really can promote it externally through your social media channels and even traditional channels like a news release, and it drives a lot of traffic back to your website. A very strategic marketing opportunity currently. Video is very exciting. Video, right? It's really a great way to show your personality, your brand, for you to really shine and be very credible, I think, in person. It takes people practice to warm up and get used to it, but once you have nailed it, you can do a really good job of communicating effectively. So, we're seeing a lot of formats, Facebook Live, Facebook 360 video. We're seeing more and more of that. So I would encourage you to try to get your leadership familiar with being on video if you're not already. We know that there's 4 times open rates with videos, pictures on social media. Try always, if you can, if it makes sense, to include a video or a picture in what you're doing to help tell your story. Facebook, very personal, right? It's interesting. Probably even some people in this room that I've known for the 12 years I've had a business may even be in my Facebook, maybe a Facebook friend. Because when it first came out, I think we didn't know if it was personal or business. So I still have a lot of business relationships in my Facebook network. And so, a word of caution, right? The creep can happen. So even though I'm posting pictures about my 2 sons and what I'm doing personally to share mostly with my family, that's in Wisconsin largely, and I want to have them know my children more because there's just that distance factor. I also need to be aware, if I'm not, that my network also has access to that information. And I find it as a good thing because I don't have anything to hide. I'm pretty straightforward. I'm not out there. So I don't really have anything to hide. But it's important to think that through if you do have business contacts that are still in your network that you haven't blocked. So creep can happen. I just caution people about that. And then also if you are publishing it publicly and you're not careful about just sending it to your own network, anybody can Google you and find out exactly what you were doing last weekend. So, we've all heard those words of caution. But from a business standpoint, you don't want to be out partying all weekend and then come to the office and be trying to sell a big deal to, big corporate client. You have to be careful of some of those nuances. Very important, but very sensitive. So I think even the digital natives, the younger generations, I think they're still navigating and figuring that out. Like, okay, every time I go into a job interview now, I'm probably going to be Googled. They're probably going to try to find me on Facebook to just know a little bit about my back personality to make sure that I'm ethically aligned or aligned with what the overall brand is. It's just very important. Here are just some statistics on Facebook if you're interested. I'm sure Kelly will be offering this deck to you later. LinkedIn, I think it's one of the hugest opportunities for you to really send your message out there. Again, you can have longer format posts here. I like to also think of LinkedIn as today's kind of print forum. So I equate it to like print journalism, right? It's a great way to share thoughtful commentary about what you're trying to communicate directly to a business audience. So it's a great forum to really have a longer conversation if you want to have it there. You can also post, you got to think through the strategy behind it, how often are you going to post, but you can post really thoughtful things at least a couple times a month, maybe once a week. You don't want to also have the exhaustion factor of, oh, Teresa is, posting again, and then people tune you out. So you really have to think all that through. But you really, I think, have a great audience there to consistently deliver your message in a thoughtful and meaningful way. So some best practices for LinkedIn, hyperlinking texts, visuals, embedding videos, again, So, these are also ways to get more attention to what you're posting, to draw more eyeballs to your actual core messages. So, would encourage you to think through that. Again, it takes time and effort to put together a good package, to put together a good article that you're going to post on LinkedIn. So, it takes time, and you have to devote time to it. I mean, it's free, but you know what? You can get a lot of energy and momentum behind you and interest here. So, just do it well and do it consistently is my recommendation. And our digital strategist at Van Eperen, he often talks about pick 1 or 2 forums that you really can own, because doing all social media platforms, it's just overwhelming. You're not going to do it well. So own a couple that you really feel like are going to be the most effective for what you're trying to do, the audiences you're trying to reach, and then put energy behind that, put marketing energy behind that, and do it well. And then there's also just sharing posts regularly. You need to think through what works for you, right? So you may want to post original content that you're generating, articles. You may want to agree to maybe do that once a week, once every 2 weeks. And then you can also just link on news of the day or to flag things too to make sure that your personality is going out there and you're sharing more information. Social branding, also Twitter, I think is huge for organizations. That's a great way, not so much of a personal, brand forward, but definitely an opportunity for your business organization to be out there. I like to think of it as the soundbite or broadcast journalist medium these days, equated to that, because it is shorter format, right? We all know about the character limit, even though I think they've changed that. But it really is more soundbite-like, so shorter format, make it more conversational. That is definitely a takeaway for Twitter. Visuals, graphics if you can create them. There are, and I can tell you about some of these after the discussion, but there are ways to get original digital imagery content pretty low price to include in your social. We would always encourage you to do that. Live events, jumping into those if you're comfortable doing that, if your organization leadership is comfortable doing that. It's a great way. Webinars, those types of things are great ways to use digital media to also kind of have face-to-face, even though it's digital. We talked about social influencers a bit, but they are very important to know who is in your industry, who has a social influence following that could potentially lead to somebody calling you for a business opportunity or whatever your goal is, somebody that's going to carry your message forward, communicate something you're trying to share with others. So again, raise your right hand, please. I promise to professionally and consistently deliver my brand message. If you promise me that, you will have a huge takeaway, and I'll feel so much better about spending the morning with you. Thank you so much. So I guess we are going to open it up to a couple questions. 20 minutes really flies. So any specific questions about using some of the formats or how you develop a marketing platform for yourself that could make sense?
Good morning. Thank you, Laura, for sharing that the valuable information on marketing. My name is Dr. Jarena Valentine. I am the founder and CEO of Integrative Management Solutions, where we help people doing good do it better. Great. My question is regarding blogging. I come across a lot of interesting articles in my field, and if I'm blogging and then linking that article or other information that I'm referencing, am I driving away people who are coming to my site to go to the other site if I hyperlink that information?
Yes, but you're also capitalizing on, if it's a credible article, I think it's a great way to capitalize and to also add, your take on that message. So yes and no, it's a push and a pull. I think, you want to use influencers, you want to use credible sites to draw ideas from, but then also have a message that people want to come and hear from you directly. So it's a yes-no answer, but I think it's a positive in the end. Do it, right?
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Good morning. Great presentation this morning. Good thoughts to take away from this presentation. Alan Hepner, Legal Shield Business Solutions. We help people worry less and live more. My question is relative to social media. You suggested taking like 1 or 2 platforms to use. What's the best time of day to create the most engagement on which platform?
Right. So I took that detail out of this presentation. We usually provide more of that context. for professional presentations when we're working with clients. So it depends, right? Like, so if you have if you want to know specifically about LinkedIn or about Facebook, I can have my staff get you the detail. But generally speaking, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, middle of the day is definitely, and depending on what time zone you want to communicate in, it really, mid-morning. And I've seen statistics say like right after lunch too. People, so they evolve too, right? So,
Sure.
but we'd be happy to share those with you, after today's presentation. But it's important to know, and absolutely part of your strategy. When do we want to push this content out? When do I want to be retweeting things or tagging things? Absolutely a smart question.
Thank you.
And thanks for sharing your brand up the front. Very good at doing your 10-second elevator speech.
Good morning. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm Suzanne Scheer with the Mecum Group. What is your opinion as far as how frequently to post? I love Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm not as familiar with, but what is your general advice?
Twitter, right, and it depends on the forum, right? So tweets are gone. What have I heard? Tweets are gone within, it's like 15 minutes. The life of a tweet is 15 minutes. Don't quote me on that, but approximately. It's very short, right? So we encourage clients to also to make sure they're using platforms like a Hootsuite to send that message out more than once. So you post it, and then it will digitally automatically send that post a couple times the week. So if you're not online, at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, then you repost it to tweet again on a Thursday afternoon. So we typically say try to get a little bit more mileage for something that you've created. So try to post it at least a couple times. For Twitter, you got to be in the conversation. I mean, it's like so fast moving, so I think you really need to, what is the strategy about? When your audience is there, you got to try to dig down, do a little bit of research, and find out when, if you can, pin down when they're going to be on Twitter, and try to target those times. And then, frequency really is best practices. You need to know your organization, the appetite for getting information from your organization. So it's hard to say without kind of knowing a lot of the back detail. So I don't know if I'm directly answering your question, but it depends, right?
Thank you.
Sure.
Good morning. Thank you as well. My name is Tammy Garner. I'm from One Source Consulting. We help integrate people, processes, and systems for small and medium-sized businesses. Just noted how you spoke about driving inbound traffic to your website. What do you use to analyze the data that you're collecting, and then how do you follow up, with that
Sure,
data?
right. So Judd Ashman is here, who does website management. He's the true guru, right? But there are definitely tools out there that you can layer and skin your website with, like a HubSpot, to track all that inbound traffic, to know who's reading your content, to build a pipeline. I think the easiest solution is to have kind of something on your website where they have to log in information, in order to get some data, so then who is coming to your website. So that inbound person, you're capturing who they are immediately. But definitely, I mean, the beauty of today's digital age is you can track everything, right? So there's not a lot of guessing about ROI. So that is the beauty of it. A lot of speaking, a lot of face-to-face, that's intangible, but we know it's important to reputation management. We know it's important to be in the media, that media still exists and can definitely carry your brand forward. So thank you for attending today. I appreciate your interest, and please carry your brand forward consistently and professionally.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Laura. There's some key takeaways, of course, blogging, the importance of social media, and that we are our corporate brand. And so whether we are an entrepreneur, a small business owner, or a part of a larger corporation, we all play an integral role in branding for our organization. So be mindful of that, and remember the oath. Don't forget the oath. We all left here. We all saw the hands. It's on camera. And so with that, this concludes this month's episode of Mid-Atlantic Federal Credit Union Small Business University. Thank you for joining us online as well as here in the television studio. We hope that you will join us again next month, October 20th. We will have Deputy Secretary Benjamin Wu joining us, and he will be talking about the steps to small business success here in Maryland. So we look forward to seeing you again on the 20th. Until then, have a great day.